Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Stewart, and I'm here today to talk to you about my presentation on my final project about teacher preparation efficacy. So, formal teacher preparation has long been revered as the way to prepare teachers for real-world experiences of teaching in the classroom. But does that really make a difference? Does formal teacher preparation make a difference for classroom teachers, or does informal preparation do just as much? I wanted to look at it through the lens of culturally responsive teaching, and so I'll tell you a little bit about my background here in a second, but because of that culturally responsive teaching, I wanted to use the TALIS survey data to see how does formal teacher preparation training and classroom practice affect teachers' feelings of preparedness within the classroom. So I wanted to see, after the analysis of the TALIS data, how that shows if formal teacher preparation makes a difference for culturally responsive teaching. So moving forward, just a little bit about my background. This is actually the start of my 16th year. And before I was in this current position, I was a foreign language teacher, an ESL teacher, English as a second language teacher, for about 12 years. When I took this job, I'm the ESL supervisor for K through 12 at a school district that is 5,000 students, K through 12, and about 1,200 of those are English language learners. So I had to task myself when I became the supervisor of this program, how do I adequately prepare the teachers to teach our ELs, to teach with our English language learners. So I had to task myself with finding real world, applicable, meaningful professional development for our ESL staff. We had a lot of newcomers coming from Central America, and I just found myself constantly searching for more formal training to prepare these teachers for what that changing demographic looked like within their classrooms. So I wanted to see about the relationship between formal training and to what extent teachers feel prepared. So throughout this presentation, it's really going to be a conversation, just me talking to you about some of that data. So here are my questions. How does formal teacher preparation training and classroom practice affect teachers' feelings of preparedness within the classroom? So the null hypothesis would be there is no statistical difference between formal training and the teacher's feelings of being prepared. So the teachers do not need formal training in order to feel prepared. However, this alternate or alternative hypothesis, which is what in the beginning I thought probably would happen, but I wanted to see what the data said, there is a statistical difference between formal training and the teacher's feelings of being prepared. So therefore, the teachers would need formal training to be prepared. It was really interesting to me as I built my literature review and also working with the teachers in my district, how they felt about things like the ESL Academy that's put on through the state of Arkansas and those kind of formal training versus just some informal training here and there and then applying it directly in the classroom. So my literature review is what I started with. When you become a teacher, there are certain requirements that you have to meet before you enter the classroom. But, the variation of all these teacher preparation programs, most of them determined that certified teachers do feel better prepared than non-certified teachers. I think this is an interesting part, though, simply because I was myself a non-traditional teacher, and so those emergency credentials or that non-traditional licensure track is very interesting to me to see if they felt significantly less prepared or more prepared. So moving through, I wanted to look at those variations, but also I wanted to really hone in on when Hammond discusses those diverse schools, continuing that education and constructing like that 21st century teacher education. The demographics in our areas are changing. Of course, my school district is in Arkansas, so it's a little bit different than Texas. We're experiencing a lot of those diversity changes right now within our districts that Texas did probably 20 years ago. And so, how important is it to have things like professional learning communities and those PLCs that really focus on diverse learners, IEPs, even 504s, the LPACs, those type of plans for those diverse learners. So Villegas and Lucas say, teachers need to believe that schools can be sites for social transformation, even as they recognize that schools have typically served to maintain social inequities. So just this belief that teachers need to be exposed to diversity before they can teach. They actually need to have this kind of training. So my theoretical framework, I kind of created my own little cycle here based on my literature review. The majority of teachers within my literature study did not feel prepared without formal programs. There was a significant difference in the feeling of preparedness. So I kind of looked at this visual here that I wanted to talk to you about. So you have the feeling of preparedness leads into professional development, leads into classroom practice, and then that cycle completely restarts and recycles the whole time. So in order for the feeling of preparedness to continue, the teacher must continually move through the cycle, learning new strategies in professional development or PLCs or state trainings, whatever that may be, and then applying them directly in classroom practice, and then feeling prepared, and then repeating the cycle over and over again. So it's really more about, through the literature review, direct application of whatever you're learning in the classroom, or in the professional development, excuse me. So the lens of culturally responsive teaching, they must be exposed to those formal and informal ways, but like Villegas says right here, teachers also benefit from knowing about their student experiences outside of school with reading, math. It's just that insight that enables teachers to draw upon those experiences. So moving through my paper, I think that it's more important about building the background of your student so that you can know individually what each student needs. But what do you do when you know that student needs something? That's where that formal training comes into play so powerfully. So my research method is obviously going to be using the TALIS survey and the quantitative inquiry, which is something that I am still learning how to do, the quantitative inquiry, naturally because of foreign language and that language background. I am more of a qualitative researcher. I like student narrative and student voice and giving that to them, but it's also nice to have that quantitative component where you can put numbers and statistics with what the research actually says. So I'm learning to merge both. So the data that I used through the TALIS survey, these were the questions that I chose from the TALIS. Question 12, were the following elements included in your formal training? So for this, I decided to use, pardon that typo, I'll fix that, the data from the category classroom practice. In other words, did they have a practicum, an internship, student teaching? And then they were able to choose yes or no, how that would fall. And then question 13, in your teaching, to what extent do you feel prepared in the elements below? For example, content, pedagogy, classroom practice. And so for these questions, they had to answer not at all, somewhat, well, or very well. And so it looks like the answers would range from not at all to very well. So those are the questions that I used to look at that formal training. So when I started analyzing the data, I wanted to see if there was any correlation between formal training received in classroom practices and whether it was student teaching, internship, practicum, those formal trainings, and how that made them feel prepared. So I used a one-way ANOVA at first, and it was conducted to compare the effects of the training, the student teaching, internship, or practicum, and how teachers felt. So there was a significant relationship on the preparedness. It was less than, with p-values being less than that 0.05, I can conclude that there was a significant effect on training and how teachers feel prepared. However, from this one test, I can't detail which one. So I went on to a post hoc test because there was a significance. I ran a Turkey HSD post hoc to compare, and it did indicate a mean score of 0.574 for very well prepared, and then a 0.385 for well prepared, and then a 0.216 for somewhat prepared. So if you put the two results from the ANOVA and the post hoc together, it'll show that there is an effect on how prepared teachers feel based on their preparedness in certain areas. So based on that, most teachers do feel well prepared in their subjects. So that's really good to know. So then we did the frequency distribution, and I did this to look at the ANOVA and the post hoc tests. The distributions show that most teachers feel very well or well prepared. The highest percentage was 45.9. It fell within that prepared category. But overwhelmingly, the data analysis as a null hypothesis is rejected. That alternative one was adopted. I mean, the p-value is less than 0.05, and there was a statistical difference. So therefore, my finding was there was a statistical difference between formal training and the teachers' feelings of being prepared. So the teachers do, in fact, need that formal training to feel prepared. Through that lens of culturally responsive teaching, it's important for teachers not only to feel prepared with their content, but also formal training to be prepared in how to best educate those diverse populations, like the ELLs that I was saying from the beginning. They also need to take that and apply it to that cycle that I showed you earlier, where they get the preparedness, the professional development, they apply it directly in their classroom, they feel prepared, and then they start the cycle over. So you're in this lifelong continual learner stage. So fast forwarding, after a teacher is fully trained, according to the data, a teacher should have time to apply that learning directly in that cycle that I demonstrated. It's just not enough anymore. It's not enough in our world with this demographic to just talk about trainings or to show them ideas. It's really important to our profession to build a binder full of information that you can directly use. It's not enough to just have it on the shelf. The teacher needs real-world application of learning in order to be responsive to these students with very specific, diverse needs. I really thank you for listening to this presentation. I'm really thankful the Talus data was there to investigate some of these teacher efficacy preparations to see if formal training was indeed needed to build these teachers ready to deal with diverse learning populations. Thank you so much.